Hello, beloveds. This is Yaudiola. I'm the curator of Earth School of Healing Arts, and I'm here for this deeper dive into the mindset for ayahuasca healing experience. And I'm going to be presenting to you some notes and some reflections based on a lecture given by Bruce Lyon, um, who is the anchor of a temple in New Zealand that is anchoring codes of the Shambhala impact on Earth for the ascension process that we're going um, through as a collective. And he works very deeply into the shamanic bodies. And he has really created a very holistic map that resonates a lot with my work as a Ifa priestess also, because we are speaking about different archetypes that need to be integrated, understood, that can really guide us to um, enlighten, to illuminate, and to purge, basically, from our system to get to the core essence of who we are as love. He's really speaking about a new paradigm of relationships as a portal for that um, remembrance of who we are in a space of unity consciousness and of the power of intimate relationships to catalyze this experience. And one of the possibilities of doing this work is really true intimate relating, because what we need is a powerful electromagnetic charge that allows us to see those core wounds in a space of unconditional love. And the ceremony of ayahuasca, when done with this intention, can also be a container where we open ourselves to become vulnerable, to really touch these core wounds within us, and to start allowing the dissolution and the integration of different archetypes of us so that we can really restore this more integrated consciousness that is more aligned with the new codes of earth, of freedom and love. So I just want to say I'm sorry about the quality of the video, but this is what we are working with for now. I hope that in the future we'll have like a better quality of the image. But for now, this is enough. The most important thing is that the information, the words can come across, and I will be checking on some notes here that I did on this lecture. So that we can kind of prepare to come for a meeting with this very sacred teacher. So what we are aspiring to as a collective right now, it's really to break free from the bondages of the role conditioned personalities of gender and color and race and culture, and really to integrate both the male and the female polarities within us in a fluid way, because it is only when we can really relate to our masculine and our feminine qualities within, which I'll be speaking more about, that we can actually have a healthy relationship with the feminine and the masculine reflections in our lives. When we integrate these two aspects of us, means that we have really restored the traumas, the soul injuries relating to the polarities in our lives that are represented by our first law of connection that happens with our parents, and that we become again connected with the source of the feminine and masculine energy on nature, on cosmos, so that we are not dependent on a human being to be our source and the mirror of who we are, but that we can actually know that on a deeper level and be therefore free. So the first thing that we need to understand is that the mind is always duality and the soul is always unity. For the soul, there is not the split. The yin yang really represents how the fire and the water of our system, of our consciousness, when it's whole, it's flowing. Nah? And this is so important for us to anchor more abundance paradigms, to really recenter ourselves inside and connect to this point of singularity that can witness the whole process of creativity of nature beyond the paradigms of, oh, I cannot feel emotion because of this, oh, I cannot feel this because of that, I cannot act like this because of this, like all this cultural programming that we have, to really restore this frequency of love that is at the core of everybody and that is our true nature. So many of us are in a stage of really resisting the psychological growth that we need to go through because we have a very different guidance in our culture. We are not educated into the science of love from a spiritual level to prepare us for taking more responsibilities as lovers, as the core of a society, as mothers and fathers, independently of having children or not. But this has always been, and it will always be, not the core. And we are now so resistant to going through this process because we have been led to believe that emotions are bad and are something to be denied, and that spirituality is a path of transcendence, which is usually used as a place to spiritually bypass. And this is the power of working with ayahuasca in a field of real truth, of real human beings connecting with each other, because it opens a place for us to bring movement, bring feeling back to these ancestral wounds that were crystallized and that are the source of the rigidity on a mental, emotional, and physical level that manifests itself as dogma and as disease, that are all the conflicting ideas about love, about pleasure, about freedom, about real discipline, about real spiritual responsibility. So in the Ifa culture, which is the culture where I've been initiated into as a priestess, and in which I'm really doing a reclamation of the feminine wisdom inside of this tradition, because as with all different spiritual sciences of the planet, the feminine has been taken out and distorted. But what they speak of is a consciousness that needs to go through a process of individuation by integrating the four basic elements. Né? A mind that is receptive to feel, to transform, to intuit, to alchemize within oneself the dynamics of the different elements, and in this way generate harmony. So I will share my screen quickly with you just to give you a sense of what we are speaking for. This is a representation of the Ori, and this is not pointed out here, but this is basically the element of air, this is the element of earth, this is the element of water, this is the element of fire, okay? So I would even make a note here just so you can track. And basically, each element has a quality, which inside of Ifa, we really study them as archetypes, which we call orishas, like great consciousness, which are models of behavior, of thought patterns, of perceptions, of abilities, of energetic dynamics that we all have within, and that we come to Earth to learn, to perfect, to master, so that we can stabilize our sense of well-being from a place that is self-sourced, so that we can really become free from the need of having somebody like doing what we want, which is the whole reason of our suffering on this plane, because we are mainly conditioned into conditional love. The real experience of love is this center here, this core star, which we could refer to as the element of ether, that when we can access it consciously, naturally connects to the core that is the same inside of everything. Yeah. And then this ether differentiates itself into different expressions that would naturally develop themselves if we were raised in unity consciousness, meaning everybody's connected to that center, everybody's free to express all these different elements. Express water, which speaks a lot about expressing vulnerability, emotions. It is the consciousness of the lover archetype. It is a consciousness of what we call Oshun archetype. Yeah. The element of air, it's the power of communication from an empowered place, right? Which is the consciousness of queen and king. And how many of us really experience that freedom to express ourselves, to speak our truth into this world from a connected place that is connecting all of these places, right? So it is here, it is split in four for us to have a feeling, but the basic understanding that we want to grab is that the proper functioning of the waters depends on the proper functioning of the air, because it is the emotions that inform the air. No? And then there is the dark side. These two are more like the light side. No? No, wait. Air and fire are the light side. Sorry. Anyway, what we want to speak on, it's the expression of fire. Fire really speaks of our creative spirit that manifests itself through our body through sexual energy. So this is a place where we carry so much wounding, and it's so unconscious. Like we usually will see more of these feelings here, of feeling um, connected to these archetypes. But here, the magician, the wizard, the wizard, the witch, the priest, like these archetypes that work with the magical realm of creation of fire. Most of us are still look at these as like either something that you're really identified with or something that you're really afraid of, because our society has put so much fear on fire, on our direct experience of fire. Most of religions are there to intermediate our experience of fire, putting images of the devil, of the evil, of danger, so that we never touch into those dark aspects of our unconscious, where the fire, where Kundalini, where life force really comes from. So this element here is also connected, not like the proper expression. It would also be connected to the proper expression of earth, which is connected to the archetype of the warrior, which is really the grounding, no? Like knowing where we stand and knowing our values and knowing what we would really fight for. And this has a lot to do with the connection with our fire, with our passion. If we don't feel the connection with our passion, we also don't have the stamina to fight for a more beautiful world for ourselves and the collective. So the awakening of all of these different archetypes, no? The merging, the synchronization, the healing, no? It's really, it starts from each one identifying which archetypes are more conscious, which ones are more unconscious, and then we'll go deeper into how to make them more conscious. Okay, so let's go back here for a little bit more into the notes of this very beautiful lecture of Bruce. He speaks something very powerful that I very much agree with. He says that if a man and a woman would meet themselves in love again, these would have the power to change the planet in a more powerful way than anything else. And that for this, we need to leave the place of mediocrity, of security, of relationships, to keep status quo, to keep our defense mechanisms, to keep transactional relationship up, and to really understand that the real purpose of relationship is to cross through and heal the soul injuries that we have on the our core as love, not to really allow relationships that touch that core, that open that flower, that make us feel vulnerable again, so that we can feel that inner child, and re-parent ourselves together with another. And remembering that ayahuasca is a plant medicine, a plant teacher, a plant healer. And when we go to her with this consciousness, she can act as that mirror to us, so that we can um, redo this web of connections inside of us, so that we can set different parts of our unconscious free again. He's in this lecture, he's really speaking on a tantric festival, and he's really speaking on to establishing a new paradigm for intimacy, for relationship. And he speaks about the fact that we can have two different paths to come back to our core as love. We can have the slow path, which is the slow peeling off the layers of the onion, of recognizing our personality patterns, our ego defense mechanisms, doing different workshops, healing this, healing that, blah, 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 spend lifetimes. Or we can really go directly to the core and call that core out, which is basically meeting the experience that we have when we meet someone and we surrender to love totally and completely, someone with who we have enough intimacy to allow eros to bring up the paralyzed emotions um, that we are identified with and that we have like stabilized and normalized, so that they can be purified. Um, he talks about the power of meeting one other human being and finding our way back home with it. And that once we get to that core home with one person, we become lovers, and then we will meet many others. And because the nature of love is to expand itself, is to continue connecting. And they're actually envisioning collective marriages, like a chakra system for the planet of people that have recognized their own source within, independent from the outside, but being connected to this core, being stabilized in a place where our cores can meet. Now, where we meet not anymore from the dualistic place, but from the place where we both remember that we are whole within and without. No. Once we have this experience of really experiencing this inner marriage of the feminine and the masculine, of our emotions, our instinct, our anima, our more wild nature, and our mind and our logic and our consciousness, understanding the presence. Once we experience this inner marriage, and once we experience the outer marriage, which is really the dissolution of our ego, marrying means dying. So we come consciously to a relationship knowing that we are going to surrender to love, not surrendering to the desires of one another, but surrendering to love through one another. And once this marriage is whole within, independent of the person that catalyzed us to this moment, we cannot play with single people anymore, like people that believe they're halves and that are trying to have someone else to fulfill their other half. We just become radiators of love. But this is a process of really sharing our whole selves, like opening up to melting any belief in separation and coming back to the place within, to the core. No? Um, some children that are being birthed today by parents that have experienced this process, they are free to be met by reflections of the love that they are. They are free because they don't need to go through all the healing that we need to go through, because we were not met by divine archetypes of love in our parents. And in this way, each generation comes with more freedom, less trauma. Not as we're working for ourselves, we're working for the collective. Less pain, more appreciation of love. Um, and for this to really happen, the key point is to recognize that our education has trained us to be clever in life, to be clever, meaning to get without really giving, to be on top without really being vulnerable. And this is the greatest mistake that we're doing as a collective. Now, Rumi says, and Bruce mentions this quote about how the most clever thing that we can do is really to let go of the need of being clever, because this is the shortest path to really open our hearts and to dissolve this identity that makes us suffer so much, manipulating and counting and grabbing, and to really understand that we are abundant, no? And that our destiny is a matter of being in alignment with that abundance. It is a vibration. It is not a physical place or a person. It is an alignment, no, that will keep confirming to us about the place and the people that we're connecting with, because we feel it. Now, it's a felt sense experience, and this is why it's so crucial for all of us to marry our minds back into our hearts, where we can really feel life, experience life. And the power of Kundalini, of Eros, is really to be able to melt the blockages, the crystallization, the places where we closed our feelings. Yeah, so he goes on to explaining that the Kundalini, there is a Kundalini of earth that we can invoke. It is an etheric force that once we can visualize, imagine, and call, it will start activating in us. My work with embodiment at the School of Earth is really receiving, invoking through dance, through intuitive movement, breath, and sounding the Kundalini, both of the earth that comes from below and touches our basic chakras and goes all the way up to the heavens, to call forth the Kundalini of the core of the galaxy. And through this electromagnetic power, we can break through identity, rigidity, these thought forms, this trauma that are blocked energy in our system, and restore this flow of interconnectivity inside that we experience as love. No? Hi. Mm. For this to be experienced, what is really needed is a full commitment to come out of our hiding and come out as this fierce love that is not conditioned anymore by being met in the way that we desire, but it's just love for humanity, love for love, love for love. It's a self-sourced love. Love's only desire is to fulfill itself, is a quote of Khalil Gibran that I love. And to really reach this core means to find a place in us that is invincible. It's pure spirit, and it has never really experienced time and space. So it has never really been harmed by our traumas in this life or in past lives. We all have this core. And our task here is to self-realize that core, is to die before we die, so that this core can help us to evolve and to create our spiritual bodies, which are light bodies of transformed matter, of this radiation, of this free center of love, that will take us to an eternal journey. No. And when we commit ourselves to being this fire, to being this invincibility, this passion of love, we are able to walk inside of fire, inside of the flame, and become this fire. And then there is nothing anymore to really fear. We really become these bold warriors of love, because we have willingly committed to have everything that is unlike love being burned. We have willingly committed to truth, to a level of, okay, I accept everything that is not eternal, that is not invincible spirit, that is not love, can just, I can just like be burned through it. I can just experience it and let it burn itself, so that we come out on the other side resurrected, né, as a phoenix. And there are many different spiritual archetypes that talk about this, but rarely spiritual paths go so much in depth into the power of intimacy and of love and of sexuality inside of our Western mind, really making a conscious path for us to um, ascend spiritually through life as it is, without really needing to change ourselves to becoming like part of this group or that group, but just really understanding the spiritual level of love that we are all experiencing in our lives, or at least longing for. And by understanding this, we can more consciously know what our souls are really looking for in love, because most of the roots that we have been given collectively, it's actually to hide this potential of expansion of consciousness through eros and through divine love. um So in this way, other people that are with you in this walk can help you to give the next step in the direction of your freedom as love, but they will never anymore believe in your victimhood stories, um, in the lack, right? So we acknowledge the trauma and we work with it consciously, but we also work more with calling out in each other the core that is love. And as a community of learning, we are supporting each other in this process. Um, mm. So I invite you to take a breath with me and just these informations to sink in, to start opening more of your own self-reflections. Don't take any of these like mental information. I invite you to really allow to receive and to allow your own intuition to start showing you how this is playing out inside of you. Okay. So the work that we're talking about is really the integration of the spirit and the animal, of the soul and matter. No? This is the symbol that many cultures have related to as the um, of the feathered serpent or the dragon, which are this complementary of the masculine spirit and the feminine matter, being integrated in this full expression that is the highest, the peak experience that we can have as human beings. And then there is also the sun representing the divine child within all of us, which is at the core. Once we pass through the wound of our hurt child, we get to the core of this divine child, which is eternal spirit. It comes from the whole. It comes from the divine creator, creatress. It passes through a crucifixion. It passes through its basic wound to return. Now it is traumatized, and then it has to pass again through that eye of the needle to come back now conscious of the presence of love in the darkness, also in the shadows, also in the pain, also, so that it really transcends the human struggle of the mind, now of duality, of looking for pleasure and escaping pain. So when we have this understanding, we go to our relationships with a very different mindset. And the challenge, it's exactly that once we get into relationship, now once eros is fired and we're like, wow, this person, and love and passion and butterflies and stars, and the whole world seems so magical and everything, because those um, core stars, core children were activated inside of us, no? And then the personality starts to get frustrated because there is a relationship, and the personality will always try to be in control. And if there is one relationship and two people trying to be in control, that will be struggle. This is why we put ourselves in our knees before love, and we really surrender the guidance of this ship of relationship to love, and we um, accept humiliation, being humbled before love, not to be inferior to another, but to really humble ourselves back into the unconditional love, because this is the path that we have chosen, nah? And this is the path that many lovers on this earth have chosen, and this is how they have ascended into higher grades of self-mastery through the complementarity. Now all archangels or all masters of the seven rays have divine counterparts like Shiva and Shakti, and the tantrikas. They're all working in this complementary of polarity, because once we find that complementarity within, once we commit to that within, that will manifest itself without, no? But it's basically about giving up the tendency of blaming another for them not being what we wanted them to be, which is usually a transplantation of what our parents were not for us, that we wish that they can be. Um, And the thing is that once this core wound is activated, once this core love is activated, the core wound would also be activated. And this is why it's so important for us to have this mindset, because once we come into a temple, a school, nah, of earth, we will very easily feel, because it is open in the field, our core vibrating again as unconditional love. And very close to this core are our vulnerabilities, are our wounds. And the invitation is that once we become aware of this process, we can use this experience to really make it conscious, to allow this core to heal and to uh, illuminate and to dissolve the fear that has kept these wounds deep in our unconscious, so deep that we are constantly projecting it outside through blame and victimization. Mm. This is why I myself am graduated as a psychologist, but I have never really actuated with traditional talking therapy, because um, I always knew that at the core of who we are, there is a place that is already healed, that was never hurt, and we can spend lifetimes walking around in circles. It's really, it's a collective pain body that we can spend lifetimes trying to figure out, but only through existential experience, which is really what ayahuasca allows us to experience, that we can break have a breakthrough of those layers of thought forms and start operating from a completely different place. Because with trauma, we can only heal with something that is at the same level of vibration, of intensity of that which created it. And that is a place of true surrender, true vulnerability, true energetic openness to feeling and bringing our consciousness now to it. No? This is why a lot of positive affirmation on top of a lot of trauma, a lot of pain will not work. If we want to really heal the core trauma, we need to have this core activated. And once we go to ayahuasca, the songs, they also work very powerfully, because ayahuasca puts us into a place of so much vulnerability, so much softness, that every sound, every word that is emanated from the voice of a page, of a healer, can really call back that inner light, remind us of what we really are. And this whole understanding is here to really empower this experience, so that we can consciously know and attune and call for it ourselves and discover our own song, and willingly go to those places where we would never really want to go, places that we have been trying to run from our whole lives. The whole identity is based on the denial of this pain that we never want to touch on. No? And this is why Bruce says something that I found it so powerful. He says that the shortest path to really um, liberation, which is really what we're talking about, is to fall in love completely and to be betrayed as fast as possible, so that you don't be delaying that process, leaving into romance and trying to adapt and try to work through relationship, but really get to the core of that betrayal that will catalyze um, your access to this first betrayal that we all experienced as children. And I'm going to speak more about this process in a bit. The thing is that many times we meet people that really want to play with fantasies, like really want to be in this projection and like trying to fit into each other's script of life. And sometimes we meet people that are simply not into that are really on the cosmic dance floor. And sometimes we go together into a point of the way, but then sometimes the other person will walk out and will really abandon us, like for good, and will go. And we are the ones that at this point need to choose to stand out as love by ourselves. Now, even if the other person decides to go and leave their fantasies and their projection and their transactional relationship with someone else, we now choose to leave from this place, to keep our hearts open, to have the courage, so that we don't go back to this egoic isolation. And this requires courage. This requires really the courage, the rage of the core, the rage of the heart, that really is the fire that comes from the solar plexus and that brings this erotic energy of the sacral center, that is backed up by the kundalini, and that has all this earthly power to support this love to come out and express itself as love. Because as we go through this process, parallel to all this self-realization, is really important to have creative channels for this love to express itself. It can be through like loving children in orphanages, or painting, dancing, doing something that really gives that love a sublimated channel, a sublimated expression that really is not dependent on the relationship itself, so that we can really expand that capacity to love as humans, for all of humanity, to really access this unstoppable power that is the actual power of the earth moving itself through us. It's really experience of the self-realization of Earth as love through us as human beings. And this is all basically really speaking about a process of initiation that Earth as a conscious entity is going through, which is the second initiation on the scale of cosmic initiations spoken of by esoteric teachings. Now, like Bruce brings a lot the channeling of decay and other ascended masters. And the second initiation is always what is also what we are being initiated as a collective with her, which speaks about emotional mastery, emotional self-mastery. And how the creative energy of Kundalini is really what has the power to collapse duality and restore the dance of polarity. Um, Bruce talks about this process as going from romance to reality, and that if you don't wish to have your bubble exploded, that you should have left like 30 minutes ago when I started to talk about it, because the process itself, it's really about Eros, as I was saying, falling in love. Eros sets its I don't know the name in English, but Eros sets itself into creating this union, and then the dance of polarity starts. And once we understand this, we can really dance with Eros without identifying with it. So we no longer need to project that the solution and the joy will come from that outer projection, but really use it as a mirror to become that which we have the remembrance of. And yeah, the balance needed here, and the fine-tunement needed is really to balance the desire to be loved and seen by the one, and at the same time be free to find the one in the whole. And this is a process that really makes us get in touch with great wounds, but also it has the potential of great healing. Um, Basically, like this whole process starts because we have this illusion that love is something very special that we need to keep stored in a place until someone special appears. But actually, love is this flame, this fiery flame. It's a wild being that is actually the whole universe. And the protection of the heart makes it so that we don't develop it consciously. Our instinct or emotions are not born mature. We are always cultivating it through relationship. And the reason why I relate so much with what Bruce has like perceived through his own relating experiences is because I have also myself gone through these initiation processes and find out that they were the most powerful initiations that I have received, beyond like initiations that are more traditional initiations, but love is a natural technology of earth, because once we surrender to following our hearts, we will really break it again and again. Most of us like don't want to take that risk, so we very early in our lives like go into a very safe relationship, which is really a pattern of many generations in our lineage. But maybe our children will have the opportunity to really understand and to follow this technology of surrendering to the heart and having the heart broken with awareness that the purpose of the heart is really to break itself. The work of the heart is to love, and this love is built through these cracks, not through the spaces that open more room for unconditional love to reside inside of us. So now we are going to be speaking a bit more about how this whole process begins in our childhood. Now, this was a bit of a context, and I feel that once you come to the School of Earth, it is very rich, because many people come to this place and they immediately find someone that they actually sometimes like have a child with very quick, because this energy is really the energy that sustains the field. It's the energy of divine eros, and it is like Cupid, it's just like um, flashing from one to the other. And it's very important that we deal with it consciously, so that we can understand that this is a part of a much deeper and more beautiful and more sacred process, so that we can actually nurture it and cultivate it with the attention that we would give to the most sacred spiritual path. Not that we would study science like we would study like physics science or something like that, because it's really the science of the soul, it's the science of love. And for many of us, even talking about love can be something like, oh, but I'm not here for love. But let's look at that. Let's look at where this idea that we're not really interested in love comes from. No. So there is a concept in esoteric, I think, Sufi culture, or somewhere Middle East, I think, which is called Hima, no? Which is the energy of the heart that projects itself as an archetype through metaphors and projections. Is how the heart works. And this projection is the real technology of falling in love, no? Through this longing for the complementary energy to our own heart archetype, which is the projection of the image of the god, or the goddess that we need to reunite with to become whole again, to bring our heart, our mind, our body, our souls into unity. Relationships are basically not designed by Earth for security and survival, like we were taught as a culture, but actually a very sacred journey to the heart of the temple. And it's one to really be taken with full reverence. To understand this polarity and this projection of romance is to open oneself to discover what love really is about. Now, we come to this incarnation as love, and when we find ourselves in this dimension of body mind experience, this world asks us to make choices, like what body am I in? Am I a boy or a girl? And this starts fragmenting our consciousness. This one unity energy of love in our culture starts being um, invited to make choices, to behave in certain ways, to identify in certain ways. And this is what the whole Aquarian age is like breaking us free from now, with the transgender um, movement that is happening, because the soul at its core, it's neither feminine or masculine. It has active receptive polarities in balance, and it's whole as love and has the capacity for both expressions. But the love is not an identity, it's just love, no? And in our culture, half of our consciousness is repressed in the shadows, in denial. Without the attention and the consciousness to illuminate it, it cannot develop. So we have all these uh, aspects, all these energetic potentials and soul qualities that are just there like abandoned children. And this is a very strong reason why we sometimes refuse and resist the process of embodying, of incarnating, and of becoming truly full, self responsible human beings, because the soul, with this whole paradigm, has a difficult to accept embodying the body, because it really perceives it as a limitation, until we break free and just really are able to experience the body on a more substantial elemental level, without these conditionings of the body, the gender, and everything. Our journey now is to really allow the soul to express itself fully, not beyond a man or a woman being a soul having a physical experience, or being a human being having a spiritual experience. And understanding the paradox of going beyond identification with body, with mind, or to the spiritual self, really understanding that they're all limiting perspectives, and that the soul doesn't like to have to decide because it's constantly moving to different qualities as needed, as connected with the cosmos, as connected with the community, as connected with the earth. No? But of course, we have archetypes that we choose to consciously mature, experience, embody, and serve, you know, the collective with. So in this wheel, we have the archetypes connected to light, which are more subtle, and we have the archetypes connected to darkness, which are more dense. Thinking about frequency is really like the highest pitches and the most like bass tones. Now it's not light or darkness through the dualistic mind of all the cultural prejudice that we have, because we really have a very strong prejudice on dark, because dark brings feelings, and we have a collective that is in denial of feelings. No? So both men and women can identify themselves with both feminine and masculine archetypes, and they all have ascended vibrations, like elevated high frequency vibrations, and they all have the distortions, both the light and the dark archetypes. I'll be calling them this way. Have the high frequency, the quality experience, and the negative, the distorted experiences. Okay. So we will start talking about these, and I will share with you again my screen on this here. So we will talk about these different archetypes, and I will ask you to really tune in and start recognizing through my words like how they point to the expression of these archetypes inside of you, that might different from how I'm portraying them here, but just getting like a more general sense. Okay. So let's start with the lover. Let's start with the water. No? So the first thing that happened, we were talking about HEMA, right? Like this projection, how the whole technology of falling in love happens, and how this starts happening when we are children with our parents. We are polarity, remember? So we come to a physical incarnation, and the feminine body has a more receptive, you know, the womb is space, is receptive. It's our whole body and consciousness is a realm to be penetrated by life. No? And we experience attraction because of polarity. So the first experience that we have of the complementary polarity will be for a woman, will be our fathers, which have the masculine embodiment, which is active, penetrative, which is fiery, young, you know. It's something that has been distorted and has modeled behavior. It has limited us because we, inside, even if we are in feminine receptive bodies, our souls will have the more masculine quality. Our souls are more penetrative, whilst the soul of the masculine are more receptive. So the body and the soul complement each other in a way that is mirrored in our relationships too. This is why once we balance our active and receptive within, we are mature to leave that balance in and outer relationships, because we're not longer identified and looking for a masculine to guide us. Like we have this inner sense of direction, of fire, of electric energy, not activating our magnetic field, while the masculines are also more receptive to the magnetizing qualities of their feminine nature, of their soul, of their shamanic bodies, within this fiery body, within this active, action-oriented body. And this is basically the challenge, is that especially for men, to find this integration within, you have to really cross through all the shame that said, don't be a girl, like don't feel, um, because we have both, men and women, come from a woman's body. We have both been gestated inside of a womb. And that's the experience of our unconscious. That's the experience of our core as love. It's being inside of love. Love is being connected to love. And on a macrocosms, our souls come from a cosmic womb. So we're all feminine in nature because we have all come from a source of nurturing, which is feminine. And once the masculine starts to look within, they start touching on a dimension of themselves that their minds will read and will recognize as, this is woman, this is feminine. And then the mind can freak out and be like, no, like, because it will mean that I'm homosexual, like, and some men are really like not even open to that questioning, and that's totally fine. The thing is that you don't have to question your like sexual preferences or anything, because you have this feminine nature. Actually, what we as women long for the most are men that have an integrated, well developed feminine side, because it's only in this way that a man can really see us as we are, because they can see themselves. Otherwise, there is always this war, there's always these antagonisms, because they are denying ourselves and what we bring, what we make them feel, because they're denying their own sensitive nature. So the shamanic body, the soul, it's always both. It's always feminine and masculine. And we have a lot of cultural prejudices that block us from really living this. No? So I'm just checking here my notes, but I will go with my own perception of the wheel here. So we have at the core, remember, we have unconditional love right here. And this is the divine child. This is the source of loving wisdom that needs to break through to make us integrate the core wounding emotions, so that we can become whole again and go from the archetype of ego identification with this emotion, with this unconscious emotion, to the ascended archetype. So basically, let's start here at the air. Air is a man or a woman, nah, that has won the love of the father or the mother, so of the complementary polarity of who they are. If you are a woman, that would mean that you won the love, because winning the love means you project your hema. The first person that you want to project your hema as you're developing your erotic self as a teenager is the complementary archetype in your closest environment, which will be your father or mother. This can happen at a very, very early age. And it's just a phenomenon that we all don't really look at, because of the whole history of taboo, because of the shame, because of everything. And this creates a lot of trauma because it's not dealt with consciously. So our parents, mainly, they don't interact with this projection in a healthy way, because they have not integrated eros inside of them in a way that can meet another eros in integrity, can hold space without like acting on it, and like interacting with us in a inappropriate way, sexually or emotionally or mentally. And also don't need to reject us to defend themselves from what they can feel through the love connection, between us. They can understand the energy dynamics without needing to engage in it or deny it. So the attempt of the child is really to connect, not to project that energy, and to feel like my energy is desired out there. This is the whole concept of Freud's theory, that our basic identity has to do with how much we can trust that our erotic energy, that our libido will be met with love, will be desired, will be reciprocated. This is the deepest connection to our sense of self-worth, which is really our connection to this core here. But the more the distance, the more emotions, the more wounding we have, the more distance is created then between this energy as love, wanting to be expressed and experienced as love, with all the cultural conditionings and fears and traumas of our parents. So it is called the princess or the prince because it has won the connection, but it has won this connection at the expense of one's own singularity. So what this means is that this archetype in us, it's really the one that has become the pupil of our daddy's eyes, have really become like the joy and the sometimes even the surrogate husband of the mother, something like that, that has really created this bond. They have experienced that they are desired, but that means that they would have to deny their core truth, because it's not really true that they want this connection, because it's out of balance. It's not the same thing as winning this connection from someone that you can actually engage with it and develop it intimately. So it has a lot of conditionings, and for the person to keep this sense of winning the connection means that they have to adapt a lot into the script of what is already there in the father or in the mother. And this is why the core wound is the feeling of anger. This is the emotion that needs to be processed, that is at the core between us and the freedom of our divine child in the center. I don't know what I'm doing here, sorry. But once this anger is witnessed, so many times what will happen is that if we don't have these like illuminated, this will make the archetype of the light, divine feminine, divine masculine. This is like the priest, the priestess, the priestess now, which is like very stable and open and very relatable and present and consistent and trustworthy, is the light archetype of the masculine and of the feminine. But deep down, there is this anger. Many times it manifests itself through physical eruptions or like deep conflicts in their lives that they don't really know where it's coming from, because they are like, on the surface, they have it all together. They're really like, they got it, they got it. But at the expense of their real authenticity, not of the more complex expression, that would mean the integration of the different aspects that they could not really experience to sustain this connection, because they had like a role in this family, not to keep this connection in place. So these are the example that Bruce gives, is like, these are the chakra breathers, these are the amazing eye gazers, but this can also be a very boring archetype to experience, because it lacks depth, it lacks authenticity. And the connections can be quite superficial and contractual, because they're very much like in the higher chakras. Now they're connected to the element of air. And for this air to really ground itself, what is needed is to really re-experience the anger here, to really allow this fiery energy to balance one's character, to balance love with willpower, with the courage to be oneself really, and then to tap back into the source. Let's talk about the other light archetype. So the other light archetype, which is also connected to like the superior chakras, it's the archetype of the lover. No? And the archetype of the lover, connected to the element of water, it has lost the connection. So this has won the connection. This one has lost the connection. And it knows that it has lost the connection. So it creates a very like people pleasing kind of archetype, you know, um, different from this one that kinds of like take it for granted that they have won. They have like a sense of self-esteem. This one is the contrary. It has this abandoned inner archetype, you know. It has lost the connection. The parent has never really recognized their erotic desire. The erotic desire is really this energetic bond, energetic energetic exchange between our souls, né? Because our souls are electromagnetic. So the rejection of our eros is really felt like the rejection of who we are. And this archetype here knows that it has lost it. And it has this like victim archetype, né? The core feeling that it needs to experience again, resignify, and really bravely open one's heart to experience instead of denying and being like, oh no, I don't want to get there. These core emotions are really the places where we don't want to go. That's why we get identified with these archetypes. The archetype here is really the abandoned wife archetype. He calls it the wife archetype, which it translates to like the abandoned. It's like this big eyes, like longing for the other, like always, you know, like, but it doesn't really put itself out there because it already takes it for granted that real connection is not really for them. You know, it doesn't really believe in love. There is this very deep feeling of being disempowered in life. But once this feeling is turned conscious, and this can be made conscious through the conscious interaction with erotic life force, so that we can really defibrillate that blockage, that core identification, we can catapult ourselves back to love. And the archetype that is born through the maturation of this aspect is really the archetype of the lover, because it's someone that really longs for love. So it's really open and receptive, like watery substance, you know. But it's very, very vulnerable. This is maybe the most vulnerable, most intimate archetype because it is conscious that it has lost the connection. So there is a lot of sadness, a lot of tears involved in here. But once we know that they're just temporary experiences for us to reintegrate ourselves to our invincible, that never lost, that love was always there, it brings a lot of power and this quality of invincible love that will just like be able to do and be love on a very high scale collectively, you know, not only in a personal relationship but really be lovers of life in many levels. So now we go to the dark. Okay, so these two aspects are more connected to the light, so we can really see them as more traditionally accepted, because our culture, remember, we live in a white culture, so everything that is light, that is connected to superior chakras, superior um, energies, like more subtle, is allowed because it's not really touching the core of where our life is sustained at and the power that we need to really become fully self-realized beings on this plane. Now they're kind of more airy fairy archetypes without judgment also, but it's interesting to see here how this plays out, because these two archetypes connected to the darkest, they're connected to the basic chakras, and they are the ones that we have most judgment on within ourselves too. We have more of a hard time collectively to really integrate them within. So let's let's start with the archetype of fire. Fire is the archetype of the seductor, of the temptress. fire here, this archetype of the seductor and of the temptress, means that this person has won the shamanic connection with the parent, in case, but it has won it in the shadows. So its basic core wound emotion is the fear of rejection, because it has this erotic connection happened with the parent, like they connected, but on a conscious level, there was just a complete denial of it. Like no one would talk about it, and the child, of course, has no idea what's really going on, but it develops this power to manipulate energy in the shadows. Like it can be like washing the dishes, but it's working inside of oneself, inside of the energy of the collective. And it has the power to really like engage and activate and call in, magnetize other people into their fields, and this is a power that needs to really be refined through facing the fear of rejection. This is an archetype that is very much feared and repressed in our world because it has a lot of power. It knows how to move magic, and this is why once it's integrated and it's healed, it becomes the path of the magician, of the Shakti. It is a very luscious archetype, but a lot of this lusciousness many times is not really integrated in the heart, in the vulnerability of wanting to be met consciously by another, because it doesn't believe that it can, like it has one disconnection. Many times the other parent was there, and it might develop this feeling of a lot of shame or fear of really being seen in its power. No? So it's a very deep archetype that needs to be integrated, and many of us don't have any recognition of that, and that is many times because we are very far away from our fire. And this is why there is so much projection of like witchery and evilness in this, because for some of us this archetype has been so repressed, this element has been so repressed, because we are like people pleasing, we are adapting, so we're just like here on the upper chakras. And then when we see someone operating with this power, like the temptress, we become very triggered, because we all have this fire within. We are all magicians. And many of us have this creative power very, very unconscious. And this is also something that it's really, really powerful to consciously self-reflect in a journey with ayahuasca. And how we do it, it's simply by breathing into our bodies and allowing this fire to be breathed into, because our bodies are made of electromagnetic energy, are made of fire, are made of spirit, are made of sexual energy. And once we breathe, we bring that back into the surface. We bring that passion out, and we start to relate to it consciously, so that it can come out of hiding, so that we can integrate this power, to which is the power to create. It's the power to create, to manifest, to attract with our power of magnetism. And then finally, there is this archetype of the warrior connected to the element of earth. And this is also a very interesting archetype because it has lost the connection, but it's unaware that it has lost the connection. So this archetype, when it's not healed or integrated, is the rebel on love. And this is where I believe that many of us are at now. Because we have not been speaking about love, because there is a lot of pain. The basic emotion here is the grief of having lost the connection and not even knowing. So there is a lot of grief to be processed, because deep down, love always wanted to be met as love. And here there is not even the recognition of love. Like, what? Like, stop it, And this is a very masculine archetype in our world, is also very much connected to the feminist movement, which is like, because we were rejected erotically, we just say fuck it, like I don't care, I don't want it, like this is stupid, this is like an illusion, and I just want to have sex. And this is very Aquarian, and it is Aquarian also for a reason, because once this energy is integrated, once we go through this grief, we really become warriors of love, which is the energy, the true core energy of nature itself. So I will stop the sharing here and go back to my notes just to see if there is something else. So the challenge for us is to really integrate all these archetypes, because many of us have an identification with one archetype, and we usually seek out for the complementary archetype, and we usually tend to exclude archetypes within ourselves and do the same with our partners. So we have this split as women of the guy you want to marry, the guy that is like a faithful husband, that keep their word, that are good in serving, that are loyal, um that can really like hold space for our Shakti. Like usually the ones that are more into the Tantra will really seek for this like stable, present masculine. But this archetype of the masculine can also be really arrogant, can be really like superficial and also boring. And this is why deep down we all crave for the dark masculine, which is also the energy of like the warrior, the seducer, like the one that will really know how to fuck us like properly, to take us to the realms and the orgasmic potential that we have with fantasies and like more animal, wild. And we have this split in our consciousness in these archetypes, in the same way that men and we have the split on the archetypes of the feminine too, of the mother, the holy, the good one, and versus the whore, the irresponsible, the dangerous, the slutty. And there is this erotic attraction between the different polarities. Um, and the more that we make it conscious, the more that we can, um, yeah, like understand how this attraction is really always reflecting something about ourselves, and open ourselves to work through projection, understanding what is it that we're looking for outside that is actually something that we're looking for to integrate within. And this calling, for example, for the ones of us that are mainly identified with the light feminine, that are very like motherly, tender types, but we have this attraction to the bad boys, because we want to be really penetrated, not only in our bodies, but especially in our souls. And this is a masculine that, when it's in integrity, when it's in alignment, can really break us free from the barriers that we have. But there is a lot of fear also of this energy in the world. And this is what a lot of prejudice, like racial prejudice, is involved with, because it can really destruct our illusions and turn us back to God. But if it's on the distorted side, it can also like rape and like make us go crazy. So it's all about consciousness, because the more conscious we are of where we are operating, the less rigid we are, the less identified we are, the more power there is for the natural maturation, for the natural growth that happens through trial and error, through living, and through being able, being vulnerable, to really express ourselves, and especially to see ourselves. The negative quality of the divine feminine, of the like light feminine, is really to be passive, submissive, empty. And there are some examples here of like the interactions now of these different archetypes. So there is this thing here of how men are attracted by the dark feminine, but how they don't really want to bring them home to present them to the family. And this is something that we really need to go beyond within ourselves first, of course, to really integrate that we can be full mothers, lovers, warriors, and magicians, and tantrikas. I think like the tantrika really integrates all these different archetypes because it is consciously experiencing all these elements, and knowing how sacred this energy really is. It really starts with us, transforming this split between the archetypes. So Bruce goes on to speak like about how is the sex between the polarities. It's quite interesting if you want to watch his presentation of it too, because he actually brings people onto the stage that identify with different archetypes, and they are speaking about how is sex between these polarities, how the dark masculine and the white feminine sex is really great, but there is also fear. How the masculine and feminine light archetypes can be boring, but can also be needed after you are initiated into the dark archetypes, to give like a reset after being through a tantric initiation, so that you don't really want to be fucked. You just want to like meditate and do chakra breathing and everything. If both are in the dark archetype, sex is really hot and dangerous and exciting, but it doesn't last. So we usually identified with one or the other. We can like walk through them, but essentially we are neither of them. At the end of the spiritual journey, you actually find out that you don't really exist as a personality. We relate until we understand that marrying is really dying, no? And that this shamanic projection of the heart and of eros, love is always seeking to find its opposition, no? um so Bruce speaks also about like when we touch these core wounds, how we want to retreat, defend ourselves, or blame another person. And this is very important for me to speak into, because this happens many times as a priestess at the earth school, because I really invoke the core of love within the collective, or within everybody that is open for that on a soul level. And many times when the core wounds are actually activated, we want to like stay at the airport playing and never really take the trip, and the trip only starts when we really start facing these wounds. And when we start facing these wounds, we really need to bring it to a higher source of unconditional love, so that we don't need to stay in this circle, in this endless circle, pretending that we still exist. Because once we were touched by love, we need to really start identifying, like moving our identification to a frequency instead of concepts, like fragmented boxes. We don't fit there anymore. Like identity emerges, but we don't believe in it anymore. We discover ourselves as pure universal consciousness. Mind and body creates a personal identity and self-reflection. It's endless with what we can identify ourselves with: the size of our cock, with our self-image, with our ideas. um, Attention is always the sign that it is something. And the problem with identity is that we need to feed it constantly so that it exists. So it is a self-fulfilling prophecy that we reinforce through karmic relationship, because otherwise there is just space being experienced through different people. But the karmic relationships are always about proving that you are someone, that you are lovable, and all of that, that you are worthy. But it's basically a wounded personality looking for another wounded personality, and it's a very addictive cycle of drama, like addictive because it releases a lot of emotions. But once we start practicing more of higher states of consciousness, we'll realize that we're actually just love and consciousness, presence. So The original idea of love is to really kill ourselves. This is why amor is the word in Portuguese, like mor has to do with that, na morte. And amor, it's like the path for eternity is crossing through the illusion actually of that, because what dies is the ego. We just like realize ourselves as love again, having gone through the experience of separation, of heartbreak. Na. And love really demands that we surrender to it. It invokes us to dissolve our identity, our personal identity, as in a um, reciprocal orgasm, or as a mutual orgasm, but even better. Love will take us both in an adventure, in a shared adventure of dying together to the notion of identity and all the ideas of what a good relationship really is. Real love is not the contract of mutual projection until we divorce ourselves and fight for the keeping of the children. This was never really love. It could have been a projection, but not mature love. Love prepares us to find love at the end of our identity. We surrender our lives for our partners, for our children, for the planet. We give into love. And the fastest way to find it is to wake up together and to die together onto love. We left we leave something aside because we're afraid of choosing the wrong person or of wanting to choose another person. But basically, it doesn't really matter who you choose, because in the path of love, we will find our hurt child, and anyone that can take us to that is good enough, you know. And the mind will always be finding excuses to escape the process because it doesn't really want to go through it. It doesn't really want to grow or to dissolve itself. This inner divine child that we talk about is actually what Christ and the Buddha are really. And we live in a civilization that doesn't recognize love. This is why we're put inside of um, labels that fragment us, whilst we are the totality. And this creates a feeling of what is wrong with me? Like, why can I be accepted or seen? And our cultural mindset really doesn't have a mindset for love. This is why it's so important for us to educate ourselves into it. We try to cover this sense of inadequacy when we have no, we try to cover this sense of inadequacy by having someone to love us in a way that we were not loved by our parents. No. And this can never really have a positive impact because it comes from the reaction of a resentment. And this is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So he also speaks about how most men suffer a real serious identity transtorn, like state of disease, always checking into like, is my cock big enough? Have I satisfied you as a woman? Am I making enough money? Am I enough? And this is something that we as women need to understand, that men really have to find the sense of self-worth through their own experience. Like, we can never really prove to a man that they're good enough by satisfying us. Like, they really need to go through this process and get to this core by themselves. No? Otherwise, we're like enabling narcissistic behavior, because they will always need to do more and prove more, and we're just like cheerleading, but not really allowing them to grow. No? Um, and yeah, we need to let them discover that they are sufficient, that they don't need to prove themselves to us to make us happy, so that we don't like keep inflating the ego of the boy that doesn't know that he's sufficient. He needs to go to this spiritual initiation by himself in the world. And for the man, the advice that Bruce gives, the information that he brings up, it's to never really try to be the love that she needs, because it will never function. Because we as women are love, and we will only realize this through the betrayal of external love, so that we can recognize that we are already what we're looking for. And this is the greatest wound for us as feminists, now that our first relationship with our fathers brings this insecurity, because he doesn't know who he is and we're expecting to be loved by him. So there's always this question of like, am I really lovable? Like, do you really love me? You know, and no outer confirmation can really quench that thirst. It's really something that we need to solve within ourselves. No. Ah, so yeah, the challenge is really like between this conflict of the hurt child and the divine child, knowing in a relationship, be it in a group relationship or in an intimate partnership, who is going to win? Now, is the hurt child creating enough drama so that we are separating each other, or is the divine child emerging and helping us to unite? No. The divine child is the product and the cause of the union. It is the love that has united us at the first place, and is also the result of the maturation of love. It can become a project, a purpose, or an energetic quality that manifests itself in the connection. No. And the hurt child, if it's not faced, will really sabotage and interrupt the relationship. We will believe that our partner has created the pain, the suffering, that he needs to learn our language of love to fulfill our needs correctly. And we will never really understand that these wounds were there since our birth, since the first rejection of ourselves as love. And when we understand this, we will be able to say to each other that we have like realized with each other that we have loved each other sufficiently so that we could experience in our connection our originary wound. And this has to do with like these daily challenges that we go through with um, interaction, which is like, when you don't cover the toothpaste and I feel not seen. And then we're like doing many courses to like see how to make the other person understand who we are and love us better, like, but never really being willing to touch that core, not accepting the other how he is, knowing that what we feel is what we feel. It has nothing to do with how the other behave, and going deep within to really allowing that trigger to be an opportunity to us. But if you know the shortest path to love, it really doesn't matter who love chooses for you to do the crossover, you know, because it is ultimate love that will choose that. And if you know that this is what it is about, not me or yours, mine or yours, but love, and that I really will commit to love you eternally, no matter what you do, then we discover ourselves as love. Then we are married and we die with each other until we um, recognize ourselves, our love. And this soul marriage just starts with one, and then it just spreads like wildfire. Eventually we realize that it is all a show. Now, some of shows are divine, some are trips to hell. They're all interesting, but love is a different thing. At a certain point we need to want more. We At a certain point we need to want love more than anything else, more than drama. And the irony is that we can get there without needing the perfect partner. This is all part of the delay. Any person that allows you to cross through your original wound and get deeper into the love of who you are, in the divine presence of who you are, is someone that has brought you back home. It's not a commitment of body, mind, identity to keep us happy. It is a walking through to eternity. No matter what you do, I will walk with you and with all that walk this road. It's a commitment to truth. Because love, it's always eternal. It's not a transaction. When we die to our identity and we surrender to love, we are called to bring everything back to love. And identity seeks for a happiness that doesn't really exist because it doesn't really exist. Love is transmitted from human to human. It's a real frequency, and that is what really changes the planet. We can choose which game we'll play, one that destroys the resources of the planet through addiction, through substitution of erotic divine connection with love, with artificial substances and experiences. Or we can play the game of being who we really are, which is an expression of the unconditional love of Pachamama. So I will complete this transmission here. I think it was already deep enough. I hope something has resonated with you. I'm sure if you're here until now, something has touched you. And if you watch this and you would like to have someone to reflect that about it with, I'm really into it because that's my own experience, and I'm really now seeing the emergence of this divine child after a lot of a lot of sacred initiations. And I'm really looking forward to connect to other souls that are also going through this process, because I do feel that this is a new archetype of human development that can really makes us like jump timelines, really evolve in a more holistic, balanced way, thinking about our future, thinking about new paradigms of relating with one another, with group, with family, with humanity. So reach out, let me know how it touches you, and make notes. If not, like integrate it for yourself, take it in the next time that you have like a trigger in a relationship, map it out, because all energy really wants to be seen. And this is a very wide, holistic frame so that you can localize where you are at within yourself and know where you're working at, and really invoke and use the available energy at the school of earth, wherever you are at, or if you come to a healing journey with us, to pierce into that which you have recognized that needs to be processed, so that you can really free energy, free life force. This is what it really comes down to. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening to love. Shava Shava.